Information shared on the following program is for general information purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, investment, or other advice, nor is it intended to recommend any particular investments, products, or financial instruments. Always seek advice from your financial advisor, attorney, or accountant with regard to investment, legal, or tax questions.
What if what you thought to be true really wasn't true? When would you want to know about it?
Welcome to the only show in the country dedicated to helping savers worry less about money, the WorryFree Retirement, with offices in Louisville and Bowling Green. Your host, five-time author and fiduciary, Tony Walker.
You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have to take them dives for the short-end money.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
Welcome to the WorryFree Retirement. And on last week's show, we played the entire clip of this famous scene with Marlon Brando in the movie On the Waterfront, where Brando realizes his boxing career is all but washed up, and then looks back over his past and realizes, as he infamously says, I could have been somebody. In other words, as I see it, if only Brando, here's what he's really saying, could have done things differently, he might be in a better position today. And since this show is more about money and more specifically how to retire worry-free, I decided to delve into detail one of my books, authored back in 2010 following the crash of 2008, Don't Follow the Herd. And notice the subtitle of this book, The 7 Costly Mistakes People Make with Their Money, and here's the key, and how to avoid them. Now, last week we covered mistake number 1, and today we're going to be covering mistake number 2, the same thing Marlon Brando found himself in this scene when he mistakenly started following along his brother, his manager, right, that he thought was going to take care of him. That didn't happen. And in other words, mistake number 2 is walking by blind faith. You see, in life, folks, no matter what topic you're talking about, you and I are going to follow somebody's lead. And true, as we get older, we might say, well, no, Tony, over the years I've become so much more independent. I don't follow the lead of others. But you've got to remember, during your walk in life, I know for me this is really true, there were people that came along, influences that came along, and we had to decide to hitch our wagon to them. For instance, as I think about all the credentials and everything I've done over the past 34 years, you know, I hitched my wagon to the American College, the Chartered Life Underwriter degree and all that I went into studying there. I hitched my wagon at one point to the College for Financial Planning. I hitched my wagon to Ed Slott's program. I hitched my wagon to Brian Tracy's Focal Point program. I hitched my wagon for 3 years to Strategic Coach. I hitched my wagon to Leap Systems and learned a lot about macroeconomics. I mean, I've hitched my wagon to a lot of people, but in the end, eventually, I got to say, you know what? The past is past. What I've got to do now is continue to do what I've always done, and that's look out for the best interest of my clients who happen to be savers. Now, sometimes, in the case of the Marlon Brandos of the world, there are managers, just like Marlon Brando's manager, who unfortunately are more concerned about making more money on your money than they are necessarily making sure you're taken care of. In other words, you're going to have to trust somebody with your money. And what do we say about this in the financial world? It's actually called let the buyer beware. That doesn't sound real encouraging, does it? So there you sit, regardless of your age and stage in life. I got to ask you, who is it you have blindly trusted with your money? And you might be saying, well, Tony, I don't even have an advisor. I'm not trusting anybody. To which I would say, if you have a 401k, you are. So on today's show, this is going to be some good stuff. Again, it's following by blind faith. And what I'm going to do is give you an exact example of the truth about properly analyzing the decision you are investing, or even if you've invested, you're already retired, it doesn't matter. If it's an IRA, 403b, 401k, we're going to analyze how you make sure you don't end up like a Marlon Brando one day and saying the following. Let's roll it again, Aaron.
I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
Now, before we get into the truth about your 401k or other retirement accounts, let me take a minute to provide a few definitions that are a must to understanding how money compounds and how over time the true value of money shows itself. Don't run off. Some of you I know are sitting there saying, oh gosh, he's going to get into the details of these numbers. I don't understand numbers. Hang in there, because I think if you will just hang in there with me for a few minutes, you will. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about the different types of rate of return. There is the one everybody talks about, and that's called the internal rate of return. The second type of return on your money is something nobody talks about because they generally don't want to. That's the financial world, and that's called the external rate of return. The final rate of return, and boy, this is a real difficult one to grapple with, this is called the eternal rate of return. Now, in its simplest form, when an advisor or a financial institution talks about the rate of return, they are talking about how much money you have made on your money or invested. That's called the internal rate of return. And like we use fancy schmancy terms like this, we talk about present value and future value and time value of money. I'm going to give you an example. Hang in there. So here's what I've got. I've showed this before, but let's dive into this in detail. What I've got in my hot little hands here is my wife Susan's fixed indexed annuity. Now let's show this full screen, Aaron. By the way, Aaron, America's favorite financial sidekick, and his sidekick, Matt Stebbins, just doing a great job with the show, and we appreciate you watching the show. What we do on Monday mornings with the Louisville staff, I have offices in Bowling Green, we have a staff there, and then we have a staff that really handles a lot of the things that go on around our media. So every Monday, the staff in Louisville meets, and we look at a lot of things, but one of the things we've noticed from looking at our website, first of all, many of you are logging onto our site through a mobile device. We appreciate that. You may be sitting there right now. If you just log into TonyWalkerFinancial.com, lots of good stuff on there. The other thing we've noticed, many of you want to know about how to retire sooner than you think. That's been a popular thing. We can work with you on that. If you're tired of working, you want to retire sooner than you think, let's see if you can. And then secondly, many of you love to go to the part about how do we get paid, which tells me you must not know much about how your current advisor or how the financial institutions are charging you, because you're wanting to know that. But we are fiduciaries. We tell it like it is. We tell you exactly how we're paid. There's nothing hidden here. So here's an example. Again, I'm not telling you to run out and buy one of these. This is something we need to talk about, but this is my wife's fixed indexed annuity. And as you can see, she took this out in September of 2017. So with a fixed indexed annuity, the insurance company is going to value her annuity or your annuity every date on this anniversary date of September 18th. So for Susan, it just recently renewed this past September of 2018. So that's one full year the insurance company has got to use your money to make money on your money. And they hopefully take a spread. That's how they make money. And in this case, this is a fixed indexed annuity. It went up because the market went up. So as we can see here, my wife was credited with over $7,500. That was her internal rate of return of about 7.5%. So again, that doesn't mean she'll make that every year, but last year was a pretty good year, and with a fixed indexed annuity, she'll never lose that money, okay? So the present value of her account was $100,000. Now, after 1 year, the future value of her account is $107,520, which again means her internal rate of return is 7.5. And on this particular product, there are no fees on this product, so that is a true 7.5%. Let's say the market crashes next year. What happens to Susan's annuity? She doesn't lose a penny. She'll still have $107,000, but basically the internal rate of return goes down because now we'd have to calculate that return over 2 years. So what about the external rate of return, Tony? See, this is what nobody wants to talk about. So as you can see in the first year, notice if Susan had to surrender this value. In other words, she said, Tony, I got to cash it in. Well, the surrender value is only $98,649. So the external rate of return, actually from her original $100,000, she would have lost almost $2,000. That's in the negatives, okay? So she doesn't want to surrender this. What about the eternal rate of return? Well, with this particular annuity, if Susan were to die, there is no surrender charge, so myself, or if I wasn't alive, my kids would get $107,520. In other words, no penalties whatsoever. You might say, hey, great. So you mean the external rate of return was also 7.5%? I'd have to say no, because this is a non-qualified annuity. Those taxes, when it's liquidated of $7,520, have to go on the tax return. So a gain of $7,520, let's say in a 20% bracket, you're going to owe the government about $1,500, so that would have to be calculated into the internal rate of return. So you say, well, Tony, why are you going over this? I'm getting totally confused. Because you've got to understand this, folks, and especially if you've got a 401k or IRA out there, if you're contributing to that, what I'm going to do in the next segment, I'm going to come back and we're going to actually break that down, and I'm going to show you the internal rate of return on your 401k. That's the money, when you look at your statement, you think is all yours. And then I'm going to show you the external rate of return and how by locking all this money up and never getting to enjoy it while you're in your what we call your saving or halftime years, how much money everybody else is making on your money. You stay tuned. You're watching the WorryFree Retirement. I'll be right back.
Tired of the daily grind of work? What if you could retire sooner than you ever thought possible? There's only one way to find out. Attend Tony Walker's newest Lunch and Learn presentation, Retire Sooner Than You Think. Seating for each session is strictly limited to 10 people, and you must meet certain criteria in order to attend. Retire Sooner Than You Think. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com/lunch and learn. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com/lunch and learn.
You was my brother, Charlie. You should have looked out for me a little bit. You should have taken care of me just a little bit so I wouldn't have to take them dives for the short-end money.
Well, I had some bets down for you. You saw some money.
You don't understand. I could have had class. I could have been a contender. I could have been somebody.
Well, folks, just like Marlon Brando needed a manager in whom he could trust to help make it to the top, you're going to have to eventually trust somebody to help you manage your money. Problem is, most people I meet know nothing about the financial world. They have no idea how everybody gets paid to handle their money. They have no idea how advisors make decisions on their money, and especially when it comes to the truth about what we call the external rate of return of your IRA or 401k plan. Folks, you keep seeing that internal rate of return, you made 6%, 7%. That means nothing, okay? You're going to see this. You see, the people handling your money will be happy to show you the internal rate of return all day. We run those for our Schwab program. We give you statements and it shows you exactly what the internal rate of return is, but that doesn't mean that's the money you're going to put in your pocket and spend. That's just a piece of the puzzle. No, depending on how much is the external rate of return is exactly what you need to be concerned about. So what I did, through the magic of TV, I'm going to go over this spreadsheet. It's a lot of numbers, but we're going to try to boil this down and make it very simple. So we've run Heather in our Bowling Green office. Heather is also a registered investment advisor. We're both fiduciaries. Sometimes people say, well, Tony, what happens if something happens to you? If you got sick or something, who's going to help run the ship? Well, Heather can continue keeping on. We've got a full-time staff. My son-in-law is now with us. Everything's going to be fine, folks. But Heather actually runs these kind of numbers. So I said, Heather, let's make an assumption here. Okay, let me grab my little cheat sheet, and we're going to put this full screen for you. We're imagining that you're 25 years of age, and you're going to fund a 401k. And again, these are just numbers, folks. We're just trying to use an example. And you're going to start out funding that 401k at $5,000 a year, and then we're going to inflate that by 4%. In other words, as you make more and more money, we're assuming you're going to up the ante and increase your contribution each year by 4%. So if we look at that, the first year annual payment is $5,000. We're going to assume you make 4%. Again, it's just an assumption. Now notice though, in a perfect world, we have no fees. So at the end of the year, in the perfect world, all right, you should have, let's see what that would be, $5,200. Yeah, so you made that. They go to age 26. Now you start off with $5,200. You put in an extra payment. That brings it at 4% to $10,816. So you just keep adding more and more money. The money keeps growing at 4%. And then we're going to fast forward. So we'll say, okay, so at age 64, let's say you're shooting to retire at 65, how much is in this account in a perfect world? Again, you started funding the 401k at $5,000. You increased it by 4% per year. You made an internal rate of return of 4%. So your future value, that's how much would be in your account at age 65, is $960,000. And you say, wow, that's a lot of money. And on paper it is, but that's not all your money, and that's not what was going on internally, okay? Let's see the real world, all right? So let's do this again. Now we're going to say, well, what if there was a 1% fee charged by Wall Street all the while? All right, that's all we're going to do. It's called a headwind. When I mentioned earlier, I flew down to Orlando, and I guess because we're going north and south, we didn't run into as many headwinds, and it was pretty much the same flight time down there and back. But you'll notice if you ever fly out west, you have headwinds against that plane, and it usually takes you longer to fly out west than when you come back from west to east. That's because you pick up a tailwind. So think of these fees buried in your 401k as headwinds. So we're going to do the same thing. Let's go full screen here. So if we put in $5,000, we have 4%, but notice a 1% fee, they take $50. Doesn't sound like a lot, and it's not, okay? But your balance at the end of the year is $5,148. See what's going on, all right? Now we're looking at the external rate of return. The next year, you only have $5,148 to invest because remember, Wall Street took some fees out of there. Now you put in $5,200 at 4%, the fees go up to $103. You say, well, why is that, Tony? Why is there more fees? Because they're more money. Remember, folks, even us with our Schwab platform, even though we have some of the lowest fees in the industry, the more money you make, the more money we take. Regardless of whether it goes up or down, we still get paid. That's why if Wall Street out here is charging you 1.5%, a lot of money managers are charging that, man, that's putting you way behind the 8 ball here. This is just assuming 1%. So we keep doing this. We're trying to understand the external rate of return. So we fast forward to 64. Remember what our number was before, well over $900,000 you would have in your account. But because of these fees, because of these headwinds, as we fast forward, look at this. The account only has $786,000 in it. So you say, well, Tony, that's a lot of money. Where did that money go? It went out of your 401k and into somebody else's pocket. But you know what? That's really not the only headwind. That's just the fees. You've had the lost opportunity cost on it. You can't use the money. Just think of things you might have been able to do with that money. Last night, I see a lot of people, by the way. I had 20 appointments yesterday on Monday. We're recording this show on November 6th, Election Day of all things. Wonder how that's going to turn out. But anyway, Election Day, November 6th, 2018, I've had all these appointments. I had a gentleman come in last night, and kind of sheepishly, he said, well, at my age, I know the 401k should be more than that, but I made a tough decision years ago. And I said, what was that? He said, I got so far behind in credit card debt, I took money out of my 401k to pay it off. And he said, I remember calling the 401k administrator, the people that held on to his money, that made fees on his money, keep in mind, and they just thought that was the stupidest thing in the world. They literally made me feel about this high, about like this little bobblehead here, all right? And I said, you know what? What was the credit card interest? He said, oh gosh, it was like in the high 20s. And I said, how do you feel now that you have no credit card debt? He said, I feel like a bird out of a cage, Tony. So yeah, although he took money out of the 401k and it affected his 401k growth, actually he made a 29% rate of return because that roughly was how much he was paying in credit card debt. So I told him, I said, forget the taxes you had to pay. You got out of 29% credit card debt. I think that was actually a good move. And he thought, hey, thanks for the praise, but I really did. So you have opportunity cost on that. What else do you have? Okay, think. You had the fees, you got opportunity cost, money you can't get at because it's locked up in the 401k. The tax tumor. See, as we move forward, again, you say, well, I got $786,000. I say, no, you don't. We haven't even dealt with the taxes on that. So if you were in a 20, 30% bracket, there's another roughly $200,000 that goes to the government. So now you take $786,000, you take off a couple $100,000, whatever the taxes are. They could even be higher than that. Who knows what future taxes will be. Now you're down in the 500 range. How's this looking so far? And by the way, how much did you put in? This is kind of wild. Over the course of your lifetime, in this example, between age 25 and 64 under this scenario, you would have invested over $475,000. So the bottom line is, as we start adding these headwinds, we haven't talked about inflation, that's another headwind. You actually have no more money after however many years that is. Was that 30, 40 years? You have no more money in the account after headwinds than when you started. So you might be saying, well, Tony, I don't get it. How come the financial world never tries to teach me how to make money on my money? How can I avoid and understand more about these external rates of return and these eternal rates of return you keep talking about? The only way we can do that is to meet in person and look at your specific situation. What I do on that, it's really easy. You just go to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. There you go. You got your mobile phone. You can do this. We've figured out, Matt tells me it takes 30 seconds on average to click on the Let's Get Started. So just do it. It'll be life-changing. We'll meet in person at either our Bowling Green or Louisville, Kentucky office. Best of all, there's no cost or obligation. I mean, we're going to meet for 30 minutes to see how I can help. You've got nothing to lose and possibly lots to gain. So take advantage of that, TonyWalkerFinancial.com. Well, when we come back, we're going to talk about the Bible, and we're going to get into eternal rates of return and the memory of somebody. You know what? That's the thing, too. When you eventually pass away, it's not just how much money you leave, it's the memories and the effects you've had on others you've touched during your lifetime. Good stuff. I got to get me a cup of coffee. I'll be right back.
Tired of the daily grind of work? What if you could retire sooner than you ever thought possible? There's only one way to find out. Attend Tony Walker's newest Lunch and Learn presentation, Retire Sooner Than You Think. Seating for each session is strictly limited to 10 people, and you must meet certain criteria in order to attend. Retire Sooner Than You Think. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com/lunch and learn. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com/lunch and learn.
Could your IRA or 401k withstand another stock market crash? Nobody knows what the stock market will do in the future, which is why you should attend Tony Walker's newest presentation, Safeguarding Your Money During Turbulent Times, Monday, December 3rd, right here in Louisville. Learn the 4 risks to your retirement and how to avoid them this Monday, December 3rd. Tony's presentation is free to the public, but registration is required. So log on now to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. That's TonyWalkerFinancial.com.
Oh yeah, a good cup of coffee. You know, the Bible, we've been talking about internal, external, and now eternal rates of return. And when you're dead and gone, the Bible's pretty clear on one thing. I believe life was meant to be more simple, and the more simple you can keep things, the more control you'll have over the outcome. Now, God's primary goal for us, I really believe this, is to figure out how we can use and enjoy this money. It's just a commodity. It's nothing we can take with us. So no matter how much you have or how little you have, it's just money. And here's the thing, here's the secret. You do not need $1 million to live on in retirement. I don't know who came up with that. Well, I know who, the financial world. My granddad never had a lot of money. He lived on his pension. He couldn't even tell you what the rate of return on it was, but it was enough for him to enjoy life. So the big lie from the financial institution is you got to sock more and more money away with us. Well, no wonder they're telling you to do that. That's how they get paid. So the secret sauce behind our worry-free retirement is rooted in this trust that God is going to provide the resources we need just at the time we need them. Let's take a look at my favorite book in the Bible about money, and that's Ecclesiastes 5:19. Aaron, let's go there full screen, which simply says, "As for every man to whom God has given riches and wealth, He," that's God, "has also empowered him to eat from them and to receive his reward and rejoice in his labor." Guess what, folks? It says this is the gift, not a gift. This is the gift of God. So you can't blindly follow the financial world and assume that they're going to show you how to use and enjoy this money. That's God's job, and He'll see to it. And it doesn't matter, again, how much you have, but how you're going to make the most of what you got. And one of the things you can do, you can take control, is trying to keep these darn costs down. By the way, speaking of enjoying life and the gifts that God's given you and the talents, outside of helping a lot of savers worry less about money, I have a passion for golf. I love it. My wife would say, "Tony, I think you're almost obsessed with golf." But one of the persons, we talked about influential people in your lives, one of the persons that had a very positive influence on my golf game and also life is well-known golfer Buddy Demling. Now, Buddy unfortunately recently passed away on October 31st. Buddy was a former PGA professional and well-known trick shot artist. In fact, he even came to Bowling Green and we did a little clinic on golf. We had some interplay. He even got his clubs out and did some trick shots. It's a hoot to watch. But basically, Buddy and his late wife, Sarah, became clients of mine about 10 years ago. Now, Buddy is one of those rare people that seems to always be laid back, encouraging. He loves to talk about golf. In fact, he even authored a book. I love the title of this, and it's called Simply Golf. Buddy was a simple man, had a simple view on money. He knew how to use and enjoy his money. And in fact, he gave me permission to share this shortly before he passed away. He told me, he said, "Tony, since Sarah passed away, I'm going to sell the house, I'm going to move an apartment, I'm going to get an extra bedroom for my grandson, and I'm just going to play golf." He didn't need a lot of money. He understood the meaning of contentment, and he finished out his life in a 2-bedroom apartment enjoying his grandson and his daughter and son-in-law. By the way, speaking of smart people who love golf, did you realize the late, great Billy Graham was a golf lover? In fact, in the May 2018 edition of Golf Digest, I read this on the plane the other day, Mr. Graham gives us 3 secrets for good living, and they're just like golf. Number 1, let's put these up. These are good. First, you got to keep your head down in golf. We always hear that, and he says if you don't keep your head down, you're not going to hit the ball. And Billy Graham relates that to being humble. Keeping your head down and being humble in life will take you a long way. Secondly, Billy Graham reminds us that we got to keep our eye on the ball. He says that we have many things to live for, but many of us have forgotten what we're here living for. Really, really challenging words. And then finally, I always have to ask you, what are you living for? You know, we talked about Buddy. Buddy was living for his family and enjoying golf and enjoying his walk with the Lord. Pretty nice, simple life. Finally, look at this one, follow through. In golf, when you're swinging a club, you have to have a good follow through. The farther you follow through, the farther the ball goes. And in life, if you don't follow through with what you've set out to do, you're going to have some poor results. One more quick story, we're running out of time. I was playing golf with Buddy last year, and he said, Tony, you're not following through on your swing and holding your pose. And I said, what do you mean holding a pose? And he said, follow through. I threw the club up there and I stopped. He said, there you go, stop there. And I said, you mean you want me to do that after I swing on every shot, hold my pose? And he said, try it. So the next shot, I get out there, I get my stance, I'm ready to go, I swing and I hold my pose. I kept holding it and I looked over and I said, Buddy, I feel stupid when I do this. And he looked at me and he said, you look stupid when you don't. I thought that was great. That was a lesson for Buddy Dibling right there. So maybe that's you though, folks. Maybe you feel like, Tony, I don't know how to keep my eye on the financial ball. I don't have a good coach. I'm not following through. I don't know how to hold my pose. In fact, I feel like I'm a lost ball in high weeds. Can you help me make sense of this stuff? And I would have to say, yep, and I'm really good, a lot better at retirement planning, folks, than I am golf, believe me. And it's easy to do. To take advantage of meeting with me in person, all you got to do is log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com. I'll put my 34 years of experience in working with thousands of savers to work for you. Now, the first meeting, all we do is sit down and go over your stuff in person to see how we might help. The second appointment, this is the best appointment, I provide you a written game plan that's absolutely free. You can take that and study it and look at it, and then if you decide to do business, we'll do business. So again, take advantage of meeting with me in person. Log on to TonyWalkerFinancial.com, and I'll look forward to seeing you soon. So between now and next week, if all else fails, you remember to be worry-free. Make it a good one.